November 7th, 1997, 2:33 a.m., Minneapolis, North Side. The smell of burning wood mixed with the frozen Minnesota air as orange flames tore through the windows of the Minneapolis Community Music School. The 67-year-old brick building that had taught music to thousands of low-income children was collapsing floor by floor. Fire Chief Rodriguez stood in the street, radio in hand, watching the roof cave in. "Building's a total loss. We're just containing the spread now." Inside those flames, 127 instruments, 14,000 sheet music books, 40 years of photographs, and the dreams of 340 children who had nowhere else to go. By 5:47 a.m., the fire was out. What remained was a blackened skeleton of wet ash and twisted metal. And in 4 hours, James Wilson would arrive to see 40 years of his life reduced to ruins. Or so he thought. Because at that exact moment, 12 miles away in Paisley Park, a phone was about to ring. James Wilson was 64 years old and had spent 40 of those years running the Minneapolis Community Music School. He'd opened it in 1957 in a basement with 12 kids and 4 broken instruments because he remembered what music had done for him. At 12, James had found a dented trumpet in the trash. That trumpet saved his life, pulled him away from the gangs that claimed most of his neighborhood friends. His teacher, Mr. Harrison, gave him free lessons. "One day, James, you'll give someone else a chance." Those words became his mission. By 1997, the school had grown to a 3-story building, serving 340 children from the poorest families in North Minneapolis. Kids whose parents worked 2 jobs, kids in foster care, kids who'd never own an instrument if not for this place. Among them was Marie Chen, 9 years old, daughter of Vietnamese immigrants. Her mother worked 60-hour weeks in a textile factory. Marie had been learning violin for 2 years, practicing on the school's instrument because there was no room at home. Her dream was to play in the Minnesota Symphony Orchestra someday. That violin was now buried under collapsed beams and ash. At 8 a.m., James pulled into the parking lot. His hands shook on the steering wheel. He'd gotten the call at 3:15 a.m., but couldn't bring himself to come until now. He walked through the still-smoking entrance, his shoes crunching on broken glass and wet debris. The piano where hundreds of children had learned their first scales was now just twisted wires. On the wall, he found a photo frame, half burned. The picture inside showed the school's first recital in 1967, 12 children standing proudly with their instruments. James picked it up, and his legs gave out. He sat in the ash and wept. 40 years. 40 years of 6 a.m. openings and midnight closings. 40 years of scraping together donations, fixing broken instruments with tape and prayer, convincing parents that music mattered as much as food. All of it, gone in 4 hours. By 10:30 a.m., the insurance company called. Mrs. Patterson from claims spoke in that practiced tone of corporate regret. "Mr. Wilson, I'm looking at your electrical system records. Last upgrade was 1962. This constitutes negligence under your policy terms. The fire isn't covered." James tried to speak, but no words came. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do." At 2 p.m., he sat in City Hall before the mayor. James had never begged in his life, but he begged now. 340 children, Your Honor. Where will they go?" The mayor shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. "James, I understand. But this is an election year. Every dollar is accounted for. Have you tried private donors?" James left City Hall and sat on the steps in the November cold. 64 years old, 2 months from retirement. This was how it would end. At 4:30 p.m., James faced the families in a church basement. Over 200 people crowded into the room, children crying, parents asking questions he couldn't answer. Marie's mother stood with tears streaming down her face. "My daughter's violin was there. It was her only happiness." James climbed onto the small stage. He opened his mouth to speak and couldn't. Finally, he managed, "I'm so sorry. I did everything I could, but the school is closing." The room erupted in sobs. Grown men buried their faces in their hands. Children screamed. James stood there, helpless, watching 40 years of trust and hope shatter. He went home that night and sat in the dark. No TV, no lights, just silence. It was over. Except it wasn't. Because at 7 p.m., Prince was watching the news. Prince sat in his Paisley Park office, remote in hand. Channel 5 was covering the fire. The reporter stood in front of the smoking ruins. The Minneapolis Community Music School, which provided free music education to 340 low-income children, was completely destroyed. School director James Wilson says there's no funding to rebuild. The camera cut to James, standing in the rubble, his face hollow with grief. Prince watched this man break down on camera and felt something crack inside his chest. He was 39 years old at the peak of his fame and power. But sitting there watching this, he was 12 again, holding the first guitar his father had bought him. Old, half-broken, strings rusted, but it had changed everything. Music had saved Prince's life 100 times over, and now he was watching 340 children lose that same lifeline. At 7:30 p.m., Prince called his assistant Karen into the office. "The West Wing, is it empty?" She nodded. "Yes, we cleared it for renovations." "Why?" Prince stood up, began pacing. "We're turning it into a school. 72 hours. Karen blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The music school that burned down. 340 kids need a place. We have a place. 72 hours from now, they'll be here." Karen stared at him. In 15 years of working with Prince, she'd seen him do impossible things, but this? "Prince, that's not impossible. Just hard. I'll fund everything. You handle logistics." He locked eyes with her. "One condition. It stays anonymous. Nobody knows it's me. Ever." At 8:15 p.m., Karen was still staring at the phone in her hand. Prince had just left the room with, "Call James Wilson. Tell him 72 hours. James sat in darkness when his phone rang. He'd been ignoring calls all evening, but something made him answer the fourth ring. "Yes? Mr. Wilson, this is Paisley Park calling." James sat up. "Paisley Park, Prince's studio. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Prince. He saw the news about your school. He wants to help." James couldn't process the words. They weren't making sense. "I don't understand. We have a question. Could a temporary school be set up in 72 hours? James laughed, a broken sound. "There's no money, no building, no instruments. The building is here. The money is available. Instruments will be provided. We just need to know if 72 hours is enough to get the children ready." The voice was calm, certain. "Mr. Wilson, can you have 340 students ready in 3 days?" James felt tears running down his face. "Yes. Yes, we can." "Good. We'll call you tomorrow with details." The line went dead. James sat holding the phone, wondering if he'd hallucinated the entire conversation. November 8th, 7 a.m. Paisley Park's West Wing was chaos. 15 trucks lined up outside. A construction crew of 40 workers ready to begin. Prince walked through the empty space, pointing. "This room becomes a classroom. This one's for orchestra rehearsal. This hallway gets soundproofing." The crew nodded, taking notes. They'd been told they had 72 hours. None of them had been told why, just that it was urgent. By 9 a.m., Prince was in his instrument storage room, walking past guitars worth tens of thousands of dollars. He stopped at a 1961 Fender Stratocaster valued at $45,000. "This one?" his manager objected. "Prince, that's a collector's piece. Now it's a student's instrument. That's worth more." He selected 89 instruments total: vintage guitars, keyboards, drums, violins, saxophones. "Everything gets used. Value doesn't matter. Music matters." At noon, James gathered families in the same church basement where they'd cried the day before. "I have news. I don't know how to explain this, but something incredible is happening." The room went silent. "In 3 days, a new school opens. At Paisley Park." Gasps, whispers. "Prince's Paisley Park?" "Yes. The donor wants to remain anonymous, but they're providing everything. Building, instruments, teachers, all of it. Free." Marie's mother stood up. "Is this real?" James nodded, crying again. "It's real. 72 hours." The room exploded in screams and tears, but this time they were tears of joy. By 6 p.m. on the first day, the first truck of instruments rolled out of Paisley Park toward the West Wing. Prince personally placed each one. He set a violin on a stand and whispered, "This is for Marie. Best strings." Workers watched this legendary musician, worth hundreds of millions, carefully arranging children's music stands at midnight. At 11:47 p.m., James made his first visit to Paisley Park. Security walked him through the construction zone. He saw walls being painted, floors being refinished, instruments being set up. On a whiteboard, someone had written, "Music never dies." James broke down crying in the hallway. A security guard handed him a note. "Mr. Wilson, music doesn't burn. It continues. Welcome." No signature. November 9th, day 2. Prince started calling musicians. Jimmy Jam, you free to teach kids for free? Morris Day, drum lessons? Sheila E., percussion class? One by one, 47 professional musicians said yes. Word spread through Minneapolis music community. Prince is doing something at Paisley Park, something for kids. By 2 p.m., local news caught wind. Anonymous donor saves music school. Reporters gathered at Paisley Park gates. Security gave no comment. Inside, Prince worked alongside construction crews, painting walls, hanging posters of Hendrix and Miles Davis. A worker asked, "What should we write on this wall?" Prince thought. "Music lives forever." At 8 p.m., he walked through nearly finished classrooms, checking every detail. Purple lamps in each room. Kids need to feel safe here. November 10th, 6 a.m. Final preparations. Prince hadn't slept in 72 hours. He placed the last poster, adjusted the last music stand, tested the last piano. At 7:30 a.m., James did a final walkthrough and collapsed against a wall, sobbing. 40 years I ran that school. It was never this beautiful." Karen approached him gently. "Mr. Prince is waiting to meet the children." James looked up. "Will I meet him? To say thank you?" "He prefers to remain anonymous, but he'll be at the door." At 8:30 a.m., 12 school buses pulled up to Paisley Park. 340 children and their families stepped off, staring at the building in disbelief. Prince stood at the main entrance wearing a purple suit, expression calm. Marie Chen was the first to step forward. She was 9 years old, 4 feet tall, and she looked up at Prince with eyes full of wonder. Prince knelt to her level. "Your school burned down. Your instruments burned. But music doesn't burn." His voice was soft, certain. "This is your home now. Welcome." For 3 seconds, silence. Then 340 children began crying simultaneously. Joy, shock, disbelief, gratitude all at once. Parents fell to their knees. James Wilson stood with his hands over his face, shoulders shaking. Prince led them inside. The transformed West Wing, 8 classrooms, 1 large orchestra hall, instruments in every room. On the walls, "Music never dies" in purple letters. Warm lighting, new carpet, spaces designed for children to feel safe, valued, seen. Marie walked into the violin classroom and froze. On a stand, a professional-grade violin with a card. "For Marie, may your music never stop." Prince appeared beside her. "Your old violin burned. This is yours now." Marie touched it with shaking hands. "Mine? Really mine?" Prince nodded. "Really, and it will never burn." She burst into tears. Prince knelt again, eye level. "Play something for me someday?" Marie nodded, unable to speak. In a back office, James finally faced Prince alone. "Why? Why give so much?" Prince was quiet for a moment. "When I was 12, my father bought me a broken guitar. That guitar saved my life." He looked James in the eye. "Minneapolis gave me music. Now I'm giving it back." James tried to thank him, but Prince stopped him. "One rule. My name doesn't get mentioned. The kids will know anonymous donor. That's all. But the world should know. No, the kids should know music matters more than ego. That's the lesson." That evening, Prince gave a small concert for the children. Just him, an acoustic guitar, and 340 kids sitting on the floor. He played Purple Rain, and they sang along, a chorus of young voices filling Paisley Park. Parents stood against the walls crying. When the last note faded, Prince spoke. "Instruments burn, buildings burn, but music," he looked at the children, "music lives in you, and nobody can burn that." 8 months later, June 1998, a new permanent building opened, the Phoenix Music Academy. Prince had raised an additional $1.2 million through a campaign to build something lasting. Modern, 12 classrooms, capacity for 600 students. At the opening ceremony, Prince performed again. James Wilson, now 65, retired that day. His final speech: 40 years I gave to music education. One night I lost everything. 72 hours later, I witnessed a miracle. Music doesn't die. People don't die. Love doesn't die. When Prince died on April 21, 2016, James was 83 years old. For the first time, he told reporters the truth. That night in 1997, Prince saved us. He wanted to stay anonymous. Tears ran down his weathered face. Now the world should know, Prince wasn't just a musician. He was an angel. Today, in 2026, the Phoenix Music Academy still operates. 28 years, 8,400 children educated. Marie Chen is now 37, a violinist with the Minnesota Symphony Orchestra. The main hall has a bronze statue of Prince plaque reading, "Music Never Burns." Prince Rogers Nelson, 1997. Students still use some of the original 89 instruments Prince donated, and on the wall of every classroom, in purple letters, "Music lives forever." 72 hours. That's all it took for one man to transform ashes into hope, silence into song, ending into beginning. Prince never wanted credit, but 340 children whisper his name every day, because real help isn't about ego. It's about quiet action in the dark hours when nobody's watching. Music doesn't burn, hope doesn't burn, kindness doesn't burn. Prince knew this. Now you do too. What fire will you put out? What dream will you resurrect? Your 72 hours start now.